All right. Thanking God once again for the opportunity to discuss, God willing, accurately, on point, his word. Let's call Jeremiah chapter 22 wonderful promises. Not a quote from this chapter, but borrowing on a principle we saw in the last chapter. This time, we're going to see the kings of Judah seeming to presume too much in the promises of God, especially the promise that God made to the line of David to always have a king on that throne. With that, verses 1 through 3 are going to start out addressing once again the king of Judah, but not Zedekiah, understanding that he will be the last king to reign until the final fall at the hands of Babylon. It seems that he is talking to Josiah's more recent descendants, meaning either his immediate son or one of the more recent descendants around the time of Jehoiakim. That's a whole lot of words to say. These are kings that are coming between Josiah, the last great king of Judah, and the final king, Zedekiah, at least the final king for now until the Christ. Verses 1 through 3 saying, "Say to the house of the king of Judah, do justice and righteousness, deliver from oppression." Almost the exact same thing he said to Zedekiah in the last chapter. Going on to say, "Do not wrong the resident alien or the fatherless, the widow, or shed innocent blood." For in verses 4 through 7, "If you will, I will establish you like David. However, if not, I will make this land once again a desolation." Verses 8 through 9 going on to say that nations will say, "Why has he done this to this great city?" And for an answer, it will be, in my paraphrase, as we've said before, to set an example of those who refused to live the exemplary life that God had called them to. Sorry, the exemplary life that God has called them to. Going on in verse 10 to tell them to weep because those he is deporting from the promised land will never see it again. They will die in the land of captivity. Saying, "Woe to him who builds his house by unrighteousness and injustice and withholds the wages of those who do their work or do the work for him," especially in building his empire. Saying, "Is a king or are you a king because you compete in cedar?" He's going to say no in contrast, referring to David again. "Your father did justice and righteousness and did right by the needy, and it went well with him. He lived well. But you have given your heart to dishonest gain, to shedding innocent blood and promoting oppression." Therefore, in verses 18 through 22, he is going to say literally regarding Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, "Because of his ways," my paraphrase, "don't lament for him. He will have the burial of a donkey that will be dragged and dumped and not mourned in the way that you would mourn a king." God going on to say, "I spoke to you in your prosperity, but you refused to listen. However, what will reach you is the shame with which you are carted off." That's my paraphrase, but specifically he's going to say, "with which those who are on whom you depended, with which they fall." Verses 24 through 29 going on to say, "Though you were a signet ring, I would tear you off and give you over to your fears." In particular, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and the Chaldeans who are about to cart them off into captivity. The last verse of the chapter, verse 30, concluding by saying, "Write him down as childless, because none of his offspring shall succeed in sitting on the throne of David and ruling again in Judah." This chapter reminding me of Psalm 19, in which David himself asked God to keep him back from presumptuous sins. And even though we don't know the exact motives of the kings that fell following Josiah, it seems that they might have presumed too much regarding God's promise to David to always have a man sitting on the throne. Understanding that God has reminded us that his ways are higher than our ways and his thoughts are higher than our thoughts. He does not have to lie to find another way to fulfill his promise. And so, just as chapter 21 seemed to show us Zedekiah presuming too much on the wonderful deeds of God, it seems that in this chapter, the kings leading Judah into its final decline presumed too much on God's promises to the nation, and especially his promises to their father David, or their forefather David, who himself was cautious about not presuming too much on his relationship with God. helping us to once again see the inescapable reality that the only way to truly understand God and his promises is to flat out just do the things he's asking us to do.